A very good morning to all of you. It's a cold, foggy morning, but as usual, every Sunday we have our webinars. Today's session number 37. We started on 10th of May 2020 and we have been doing it consecutively since then. And today we have Dola Basu Singh, who will be taking a session on developmental editing, the process she follows for the developmental editing of fiction books. And Dola Basu Singh, she is an award-winning author and also working as an editor with Darling X Canada. So now I would ask Dola to start the session.
Hello, good morning. Thank you all so much for being here on a Sunday morning. I'm really excited to talk to you all about editing and fiction and books, all my favorite topics. So welcome, and let me start the screen sharing, and please let me know in case you are not able to see it or if you are able to, yeah? And then we'll go on with the presentation. Okay. You can see my note,
yes.
the screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So, for those of you who didn't quite catch my name, believe me, it's not you. I blame my parents. My name is Dola Basu Singh, and I'm a fiction editor, an author, and a mom to 4 dogs and 1 person. My freelance editing business is at shivli.com. And I'm, like Vivek told you, I'm an associate editor over at the Darling X. I have won several awards for my short fiction. And many of my clients have won awards too, specifically the Amazon KDP Pen to Publish contest. I am professionally trained in editing fiction, and I have written a book to help authors self-edit before sending their manuscript to an editor. I live in Punjab, where it's quite cold and foggy nowadays.
Dola, you are muted.
I'm okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Guys,
You're back. Welcome back.
Okay.
Yes, yes. You welcome back.
Thank you. So, tell me, can you tell me till where did you hear me?
It's very cold in Punjab.
Okay, that's where I got muted. So yeah, very cold, but let's not spend too much time on that. I want to talk to you about the webinar today. I have divided this into 3 main parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about the basics of developmental editing, like a kind of a 101. Then I'm going to talk about the markup process. That will be the second part of this webinar. And the third part, I'll talk a little about, being what I call a thoughtful editor. Okay. So I'll take your questions after each session. We'll try to make this as much interactive as possible. But while I'm presenting, in case you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat box. And I'm sure, Vivek will make sure that I get to it at some point. Also, I have a power cut, so if I go out, if I get disconnected, Dr. Venkat or Vivek will handle it and I'll connect back with my phone. Yeah? All right, let's begin. Let's start off with discussing what is developmental editing. Especially for this purpose of this presentation, I'm using developmental editing as a general description to cover a number of other catchphrases like structural editing or story doctoring. Basically, what these 3 terms do, developmental editing does, is looking at the manuscript with an eye to how the piece hangs together as a whole. Okay, it focuses first on the big picture and then breaks the text into elements. This helps the editor as well as the author see what might be missing or what might be confusing. And while you may also pay attention to language like voice of the author or the dialogue, in general, the author's syntax, grammar, or punctuation, these won't be the first things that you need to look at. Okay. As developmental editors, you will be looking at the larger issues of a manuscript. For example, how the theme is carried out, or how the characters develop throughout the story, or even how the narrative is structured. Your focus would be mostly scene by scene instead of being line by line. And another aspect of developmental edit is that it is not just editing. The developmental editing is a coaching opportunity for you, and it is a learning opportunity for the author. As a developmental editor, when we do a developmental edit, we don't only make the story that we have right now better, we also empower the author and help them to learn important aspects of storytelling. This will, once they learn that, this will also help them make their next book better than their last. So always keep in mind that this is not just editing, this is coaching and a learning opportunity. So where does a developmental editing fit during the publishing process? Some projects you might encounter will be truly developmental in the sense that you may only see sections of a project over a long period. You might be called on to help the author, fit those sections together, stitch them together, or maybe even decide which section to include, what is unnecessary and you might want to leave out. Or you might be called on for a developmental edit at the outlining stage itself, when the author has just created an outline to check, if the story has all the necessary elements for it to make sense or to fit a particular structure for a genre. Some other projects may have gone through many drafts, they will feel far more polished. The author might have, after writing their first draft, they might have gotten feedback from their beta readers, or maybe they have workshopped the manuscript with their critique partners, or they might have self-edited their manuscript even before sending it to you. So we need to equip ourselves to deal with both the scenarios. Realize that both these stages are fundamentally different and therefore will need a different kind of treatment. You will be giving different kind of feedback for something that's an outlining stage than something which is completely polished. Now, this is one question that I wanted to deal with at the very outset. Talk about the crossovers and the differences about other kinds of big picture editing. Let's talk about a narrative assessment first. Firstly, a narrative assessment, it's also called a manuscript evaluation or a manuscript critique. However you may call it, we don't mark up a manuscript during it. We only write a detailed critique for the writer to refer to. So if you get a manuscript, you will follow all the steps for a developmental editing except marking of the manuscript. Okay. You will write a critique, send it to the editor, to the author, to help them make their story better. This is a great option for authors to get feedback, when they are at a really initial stage of writing, or maybe they've written a very rough draft that they need to get some feedback on, but can't really afford a developmental edit because we all know that developmental editing is, time and cost intensive, right? So a manuscript critique could be a great way for the author to get some feedback initially on their rough draft without having to invest too much. Now let's talk about so yeah, no markup and only writing an editorial report. How does it differ from a substantive edit? Now, I've noticed that many websites, like even popular ones, like for example, ReadC or something, they will tell you that a developmental edit is the same thing as a substantive edit. Okay, but that's not correct. It's true that there are many crossovers between these two, but there are some things a developmental editor can and sometimes will do that a substantive editor wouldn't, at least not a fiction editor. I'm talking specifically fiction now. So, for example, creating a plot out of a story or adding or deleting scenes, maybe sometimes even whole chapters. That's not something a substantive editor will advise, even though a developmental editor might. And that is because even though substantive editing checks the big picture elements, the focus of substantive editing still remains on the actual prose. Okay. Another interesting difference, is that while an editor can start a developmental editing on an outline, like we discussed previously in one of the previous slides, they need to have a complete manuscript to start a substantive edit. A substantive edit cannot start at the very initial stages. And let's bust another myth here. I would like to talk about this. Some editors, think that during a developmental editing, the editors need to rewrite or make the changes to a manuscript. Again, I'm talking fiction here, and that's not true. Until and unless you've signed a contract for rewriting or which stipulates that you need to make the changes. So editors, developmental editors, only need to make suggestions. And when I'm suggesting, I might give a couple of examples, write a couple of examples to demonstrate my point to the author. But the actual changes, they need to be made by the author themselves. Okay. Now, the third kind of developmental editing, big picture editing is beta reading. So, what's beta reading? It's like reading the manuscript for pleasure and give general feedback regarding the pacing of the story, the characters, what you liked, what you didn't like. I have seen some editors provide beta reading as a service, even get paid for it. But mostly in the author community, beta reading is done for free. The author asks either their friends or they might ask some of their fans to be a beta reader for them because they just want to get some general feedback about whether their story is working or not working. All right. So, does anyone have any questions so far? Anything you want me to ask me about? Because we are at the end of the first part and now we'll be going on to the second part. Let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Hi. Yes.
My question, Dola. May I call you? May I call you
Yes,
Dola?
Of course.
Okay. Acha, Dola, I am now going from non-fiction to fiction. So what you've told me so far, I have noted very carefully. Now I want to know one thing, that you have said it's in steps. You can do it this way, then this way, then this way. What happens if I am working for non-earning young students, okay? And I'm also not charging them, because this is what I can do. I'm at that stage in my life. So I want to, how can I explain to them that it has to be done in steps? They expect, and it, goes in the washing machine and comes out dry. If you know.
Right. So setting expectations at the very outset is
Yes.
really important. And I suggest,
Yes.
what I think is also really important is editors talking about, as a whole, as a community, talking about what is developmental editing. Really bust the myth there that you send it for a developmental edit and it comes back ready made and all shiny and polished. No, we need to, the author as well as the editor need to really put in some work here. So setting expectations outright at the, before even beginning a work is really important. And we will talk about this when we start the next section, how we can, set those expectations.
Good morning. I have a question.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question. Am I audible? Manjushri Nair here.
Hi Manjushri, I can hear you but I can't see you, but that's fine. I can hear you.
My video is on. I'm sorry
Okay.
about that.
Probably it's me. Don't mind me.
Right. So I'm a writer, a wannabe writer, and though I know elements of editing because I've taught English literature, my question is, if I present my manuscript at an outline level, what are the bare bones of an outline that an editor a developmental editor would like to have to work on? What are the bare bones?
First of all,
Yeah, thank you.
right. Okay. So first of all, you need a story that you want to tell. Now we need to understand that a story is really different from a plot. A story is a chronological telling of events. First this happened, then this happened, then something really drastic happened, and our protagonist had to go on a quest, and then this happened. That is a story. Now a plot is it need not be chronological. I could, for example, take an example of a mystery. The murder happens at the outset. First chapter itself, there is a murder, and then we work back to it. We work back to who killed the murder, the victim, right? Who is the perpetrator? So if you look at a mystery, we are going back. So that is a plot. It's not the story. The story is, I got really irritated by somebody and I killed them for whatever reasons. But when I'm talking about a plot, I'm working back. So understand those differences. You might not have a plot at the outlining stage, but you must have a story, and your developmental editor will, help you see how you can tell that story in the best way possible. So the only thing you need is a story.
All right. So if I get this right, you would like the sequence of events, as it's called. Red Riding Hood was told by the mother to go to the grandmother. She walked into the forest. She met a wolf. It's like that, right?
Absolutely.
And preferably with the story arc, with the conflict in place, perhaps with the climax in place, something like that, right? Thank you so much.
Sure. All right. Shall we get on to the next section, or do we have any questions? No. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next topic. I assume you can all still see my screen, right?
Yes. Let's go.
Okay. Thank you. So, in this next section, I'm going to talk about the process that I follow. And remember, we all might have different processes, especially if some of you editors may be working in-house, and you might follow a completely different process than me working as a freelancer. But this is the process that I follow for a developmental edit. First of all, I want to talk about what are the parts of a developmental edit. What are the components? Okay, so 3 things. It consists of the email that an editor sends with their feedback. It consists of the manuscript that they have marked up for the author. And it consists of an editorial letter. 3 things. Now, I know many of you might be wondering at this stage, why did I mention an email here? What has an email got to do with an edit, right? But I'm mentioning it because I feel it's really important to pay attention to the content of the email we are sending, so as to, ease the reader gently into the feedback, have them in a receptive mode instead of like shoving them forcefully into a sea of red, which is what might happen if they were to open the manuscript directly, right? Remember the red marks that we all make on the manuscript? So the email really sets the tone for our feedback. It gets the author in a friendly basis. It lets them know that I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you tell your story in a better way, right? So that's why the email is really important. And I've seen many editors just write something like, hello, PFA, the edited manuscript. Not the way to go. Okay. The second and probably the most important part is the manuscript itself, which we would mark up using track changes, or we will add comments to. And the third part of a developmental edit is the editorial report. And now here is where I would say most Indian editors, at least, are losing out. This is where you can add real value to your clients. Most developmental editors in India, at least those that I have come across, and I've come across many, they don't write editorial reports. And I know it because I was one of them. I have been there. When I started fiction editing, I did not know anything about editorial report. I was an author before I was an editor. And I had sent my manuscripts to editor, and I had never gotten any editorial report. My friends never had any editorial report. So the first time I learned of it is when I joined CIEP, and then I did a course with them for fiction editing. And let me assure you that writing a critique or a detailed editorial report, it is considered a non-negotiable part of a developmental edit. And this is something most editors are not doing. So this is a really value add, that if you're doing, it is a value add for your client. Okay. But let's talk about the editorial reports later. First of all, let's talk about the initial stages of a developmental edit. How do we start? And even though I'm talking to, this presentation is mainly geared towards editor, I would like to say that for all the authors here, like for example, Manjushri, you can adapt this process to self-edit your manuscript. When you are self-editing your manuscript, this is a process that you can all follow. So the first thing that we need to do whenever we get a manuscript, whenever a client emails us, is to ask some questions to the author. Some questions that we will ask will be general in nature, that we need to ask all clients. For example, do they want to self-publish their manuscript, or do they want to pitch it to a publisher or an agent? We would want to know if the manuscript is a standalone book or is it part of a series. If it is a part of a series, what are some of the overarching elements across the series? We need to ask them the genre of the manuscript.
I think she just had a power cut.
I think Dola has got disconnected.
Yeah, she mentioned the possibility of a power cut because it's raining at her place. So she will connect through the phone. And till then, there was a question that Manjushri had asked, so maybe Anupam or Dr. Venkat, they can answer this. What comprises an entire editorial team from developmental editing to proofreading? Like, who are the different editors who work on the book? Anupam?
So let me get the question. What comprises an entire editorial team? I will tell it from the point of view of an academic publisher. Usually, the work begins with the commissioning editor or the acquisitions editor, who go out and get the manuscript or communicate, are the first point of communication for the authors. After that, the manuscript comes to either a developmental editor or directly to the production team, the production editorial team. In the production editorial team, you may have production editors as well as copy editors and proofreaders, and sometimes you even have pre-editors. It depends on what kind of a setup you are part of. Some packages have proofreaders, but most publishers will not have proofreaders or pre-editors. Most will have a production editor, and some may have copy editors. So all these people are usually part of an editorial team. Once they are done with the manuscript, it goes out to an external proofreader, or it goes to the production team for typesetting. Usually, proofreading happens after typesetting. So after the typesetting is done by a production team, usually production teams are part of the publishing setup, and after that, you can the manuscript goes to after it has been typeset, it goes for proofreading. After it has been proofread and the author has approved the final proofs, it goes for printing. So usually these are the people who make up the editorial team of a publishing house. Uh, do you have
Tha-
any other question related to that?
yeah, no, thank you. I think that was yeah, that made a lot of sense. I have come across terms like Dola just mentioned about substantive editing, and that copy editing might be divided into a couple of more sub editing parts where it's page editing and paragraph editing and line editing. Am I right in thinking that copy editing comprises these three?
Dr. Venkat could answer that better
Can
than.
you repeat that? Can you
Right. So the development editing is about the whole story, the bigger picture. The substantive editing is basically about the prose, how the language, the linguistic style, etc. is. Then copy editing goes into the nitty-gritties from the gross to the subtle, is what my understanding is. It goes from chapter to chapter, then it goes from paragraph, page to page, then it goes from paragraph to paragraph, and then it goes from sentence to sentence. Am I right in thinking that copy
yeah.
editing comprises
And
of?
that's what ideally
Okay,
a
fine.
copy editor would have to do.
Thank you.
But it's always best done by one person.
The one person should go from development to copy editing, or copy editing those four processes?
No.
Those four processes. Okay.
Each developmental editing is done by one person,
Okay.
substantive editing by another person, and copy editing by another person.
Okay. Got that. Thank you.
And not all manuscripts may require all this.
Right.
Dr. Venkat, can you share the screen because Dola has lost power? She will connect through the phone and you can move to the screen that she was on.
Okay, just give me a moment.
So Dola is back and Dr. Venkat will start the screen sharing soon.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Murphy's Law is real, Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So, anyway, hope I didn't keep you all waiting for too long. Um, Lost the thread somehow. We were talking about questions that we need to ask, right? The questions that we want to ask,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Um, some of the general questions, some of the questions will be really general in nature. For example, do they want to self-publish their manuscript? What is the word count? The genre of the manuscript, the theme. We may need to talk about the schedule, if they have a timeline in mind to publish their manuscript. Another thing, and really important, that we need to ask about is for a sample chapter. Some of my colleagues also ask for a full manuscript. But being a developmental editor, I think I can work with a sample chapter also. In fact, it's important that we work with whatever we have at that stage. So ask for a sample chapter. Some other questions, next slide, please. The other questions we will be asking would be really specific in nature. For example, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the story in the author's opinion? Okay, what does the author think are the strengths and weaknesses? We want to know if they have an idea about their target audience. Does they have, does the author have any previous publication experience, or is this the first time they're writing a novel? Are they part of a writers group or a critique group? Have they workshopped this manuscript or gotten any feedback on this? And there is a reason we want to ask these specific questions. Three reasons actually. So we want to ask these questions because we want to do these three things. In the next slide, I'm talking about what these three things are. Formulating a plan, meaning the general questions that we asked, they will help us as an editor to formulate a working plan for the manuscript, as well as estimate the hours that need to go in, estimate the cost that might be involved. These will also help us to settle the scope of our editorial work. Okay, the specific questions that we asked, they will help us to gauge the author's skill. They will help us understand where the author is in their publishing journey. Is this their first book, or have they written some more books and have some kind of feedback? The feedback we give for the manuscript, um, how detailed we are, will also depend a lot on the skill of the author. So we need to get that right at the very outset. A one size fits all approach is not the best one to go with for a developmental edit, at least. These questions also help us establish goals. What is the message that the author wants the reader to come away with? What is their purpose of writing the novel? Some might want to write a novel, to be an author is their lifelong passion. They want to do it for their career. Some authors will want to really tell a story, something personal that they feel about. So again, checking that is really important, establishing our goals. And these questions will help us get the author's message as concisely as possible to the reader, because that is our job as an editor, right? Our job is to get the author's message, their intended message, to the reader in a compelling way. Okay, so now that we've asked a lot of questions and have communicated with the author, let's presume, for the sake of this webinar, that we've got the job. Okay, yay, I got the job. So what's next? What comes next is, of course, reading the manuscript. It's really important, and I will say essential, that we read the manuscript at least twice, minimum 2 reads needed. How many of you have faced a scenario where while doing a developmental edit, you added a comment, asking the author a question or suggesting something, and then later on, after we went some pages, we found that we realized that the reason was right there. We need not have asked that question. Even it could have been solved if we had just read it before. So what
So
did we do
many
in those
times. So many.
questions? Many times, exactly. Even I face that. That's why I think it's important to give 2 reads. How that will happen. We need not go back to change my comment, find it where that comment is, change it or delete it. This can be something really avoidable. Now, when we read the manuscript 2 times, the first time has to be reading it like a reader would. Think of yourself as a reader, get a quick read of the story, to get a general impression as quickly as possible. To achieve this goal, we need to, it's important that we avoid our editing brain. We all have that brain, right? As soon as I open something in my Word document, I will, it will compel me to fix this and then fix that. So remember that this is not the fixing stage. This is the stage where you read the story once as quickly as possible. And to help achieve that, you might need to change the way you read and the way you edit. So it follows that, I shouldn't be reading the same way that I edit if I want to go fast. So how I do it is, when the author sends me a manuscript, I email the document to my Kindle. I read it on my Kindle just like I would read any other book. And I see many of you are authors on here. So this will also help you in the editing stage. If you don't have a Kindle, you can take a printout, make notes on the margins as you go. So once we get this read quick and done with, once we finish reading the story for the first time, it's important to take a short break from it. Let our thoughts, percolate in our subconscious. And after a quick break of a day or two, we need to move to the second stage, which is reading the manuscript slowly and marking it up. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about reading like a lawyer. In the first one, first read is a quick read, like a reader. Second read is where you begin thinking less like an average reader and more like a lawyer. Just like a lawyer, looks for holes in the opposition's case, you will be looking for holes in the plot and the story. Just like a lawyer, builds a case by structuring their arguments, you will begin to build your case by pulling out examples from the manuscript to support your theories, the theories that you formed after reading it for the first time. So, for example, if you thought a character didn't feel real, you will give examples of, their words or their actions from the manuscript to support your theory. Okay, obviously this second read, will be carried out in MS Word using track changes or comments. Some editors prefer, some authors also prefer to do it on Google Docs or on printouts. It's a personal choice, whatever you and your author decide on. Okay, but definitely remember to, when we were doing this previous, the first read, we need to make notes, some notes, so that we don't forget our impression when we first read it. And now here in the second read, we will, use those notes. Okay. So now let's talk about what are some of these things that you want to make a note of during the first read as well as doing the second read. So in the next note, in the next slide, I've listed some of the things that you need to note down. For example, since developmental editing is all about feedback for every scene, you will want to note the length of these scenes. Like some writers write, really short scenes, like, for example, James Patterson. Other writers really write long scenes. So it's important to note their length to make sure some kind of consistency is maintained. You'll want to note the pacing of the scene. Did some scene, some of the scenes feel slower than the others? Another important thing to note would be the timestamp or the chronology of the scenes, especially if the story doesn't follow a linear structure. Some other things you would want to note is the consistency in characteristics and settings. For example, a character shouldn't have blue eyes in the first chapter and then it changes to gray eyes by the seventh chapter, right? Unless they are wearing contact lenses or had some surgery or something, right? So I remember a funny case I'll share with you right now. So this character, came back home from a party really late. really tired, and so they just, they went to sleep in their, the party dress, the sequin dress that they were wearing. And the next chapter, so that chapter ended, and the next chapter started with them waking up, feeling really warm and cozy in their night suit. And this was really early in my career, and I asked the author in a comment, hey, I hope this is not going the cliche romance way, where the heroine is so drunk after the party that she she wakes up and looks at her clothes and she thinks, oh my god, I shouldn't have done that last night. So no. And the funny part is the author came back to me saying, no, Dola, I simply forgot what she was wearing in the last scene, because I wrote it on a different day, and I started the next chapter on a different day. So, yeah, important to maintain consistency. Just like we do during a copy edit, similarly, maintain consistency during a dev edit. Other things that we need to note are whether our protagonist has enough inner conflict as well as outer conflict. We need to check whether each character has a goal, if they have enough motivation to follow that goal, whether the character is changing or growing in some way by the time our story ends. And this is an important thing to note, and this is where many experienced authors and even editors slip up, is to maintain consistency in point of view. So really important to focus on that. Okay, next slide. I'm talking about story beats, right? So we need to make notes regarding the story beats. If the novel is a mystery, then does it have all the beats necessary for a mystery? Has the author added enough suspects? Is there a red herring in the story? You need to make sure the story follows some structure. What structure is follows is something you will decide on very early on, before beginning a dev edit. When you are asking those preliminary questions, you will know if the author has followed some structure for a romance, for a mystery. And then during the dev edit, you make sure that we stick to that structure. You need to check if the backstory of a character is simply dumped on the reader, or if the backstory plays an important role in that character's life. For example, a character who was abused by their parents, or some father figure early on, might have trouble dealing with authority figures later on in life. So make sure that another thing to make sure would be if all the subplots that the author has started have been wrapped up by the end or not. Note down if there has been enough foreshadowing for the events. I'm sure you'd all agree that the best mysteries that we read are those where at the end, when the detective reveals the murderer, and we all go, oh my god, why didn't I think of that before, right? Instead of going, nah, not possible. So foreshadowing plays a really, and I'm sorry if all my examples are mystery, but I'm a mystery, I specialize in mysteries, I write mysteries, I edit them, so probably that's why. Some other important things to note would be the balance between showing and telling. And if you notice some patterns in an author's writing style. Now, I know I told you that language is not the real focus here on a developmental edit, but still, if you notice some patterns in a author's writing style, for example, if they are using passive voice too much, or if they are really fond of using adverbs, any pattern that you notice, the author will appreciate if you tell it to them gently. Because remember, a dev edit is a coaching and a learning opportunity, not just an edit. So the author will be grateful if not only improve this story, but help them improve their own writing skills. Okay, so now we have some notes down. How do we use these notes? How do we use them to mark up the manuscript, or write our editorial letter? Best way is to organize our notes. As we are making these notes during our reading or during the markup, we need to uh, organize our notes in such a way that it's helpful for you as an editor and for the author. And I'm sure you all must have noticed, as we keep doing one dev edit after the other, have you realized that uh, some of the feedback we are repeating over and over to different clients? Yes, I can't really see any of you. I'm taking that as a yes because I myself
Yes,
have
we do
faced
have.
this. Yes, we have faced this. A show and tell or point of view issues. We find ourselves, telling the author the same thing. So it's really important, in fact, a smart move to create and use some kind of a template at the very outset. These templates you can later on use and modify as per the need of each author, as per the need of each story. It will not only help you manage your time effectively, it will also help you on days when your creative energy is low. I mean, let's face it, especially last year's events, all of our energies have been, many of our energies have been low. Just like writers face writer's blocks, sometimes we editors face editor's block, right? I'm sure there are days when you stare at a manuscript for like 15 minutes but not figure out what's wrong. So this is where something like checklists could come in really handy. If you have a list in front of you, it becomes so much easier for you to see at a glance, what are the steps that you need to take on for any given chapter, for any given scene, and then finish those tasks. So even if you are not really creative that day, you make sure that you do all the tasks that are necessary to check for a developmental edit. Another system that I found helpful to organize is my notes via a spreadsheet. Like you see at the bottom, this image, this is from my own story, a spreadsheet that I use as an author. And I have developed this spreadsheet thing for my editing, for my editorial business also. It helps me so much. I can see at a glance what is going on in each chapter. I can see where each character was during a particular scene. I I need not, on my low days, I need not, go through the manuscript, read the whole 5, 6, 7 chapters again to see where each character was. So something like this could really come in handy. Um, Another thing that I use, and I will mention this because this has been really important these last couple of years, is I use voice notes. So I have a tennis elbow, and last 2 3 weeks I have a frozen shoulder also. It's really difficult for me to type or write something using a pen and paper. So, and you remember, right, that during the first read we need to go quickly through the manuscript. So we need to make sure that our note taking is also quick and not something uh, we spend too much time on. Excuse me. uh, okay, not something we spend too much time on. So to in order to do that, I avoid taking notes with pen and paper or typing, and I simply open the voice recorder on my phone and I record my voices. Okay, so now this is where the second part comes to an end, the second part of our session. And does anyone have any questions to ask at this point? I mean, I can't see the chat box while I'm.
Yes, Dola, there are some questions. One was relating to the conflict that you had mentioned, although another participant answered that question. So Jyoti was asking, what do you mean by conflict and what do you mean by inner conflict and outer conflict?
Okay, so is it answered or shall I? Basically,
It's
I'll
been
just put
answered.
it in one line.
It's been answered.
Okay, great. Inner conflict is something,
No,
inner.
it's answered very nicely.
Uh-huh. Great. Awesome.
I have a question. Can I ask you?
Yeah,
Certainly.
no problem.
So you said something about the goal, motivation, and growth of characters. As far as goal is concerned, one would want to know whether the the character is sufficiently goal oriented or has a goal, and does it have enough motivation to do or go and reach that goal? In assessing that, don't you think there would be a degree of subjectivity? I mean, one editor would think that, yeah, this is sufficient, and another would think that this is not sufficient, something more needs to be added. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the whole developmental process is subjective, in the sense how I approach a story might be really different than how you approach a story. So this is where the important to get the balance between what the author wants to say, because my job as an editor would be to get the author's message across to the reader. So what does the author think? I can have a discussion regarding, say, for example, let's take an example from my own book, okay, because that is something at the top of my head. So my protagonist has lost her mother, and now she has come back to her hometown to take care of her mother's business. So losing her mother, it is, some people will say it is enough to have them move back, but is it really enough? Do they need something else also to encourage them? For example, maybe she is married to somebody and that marriage is also not working out like it should. Maybe they catch their husband cheating, or this is like something really like an example, far-fetched maybe, but still, when you add that personal, her personal life crisis also, then it is enough motivation. My life is not working here in this story, in this city that I'm living on. My personal life is in a mess, and now my
Understood.
mom has also died.
Understood.
Yeah.
So yeah, so from what you said, I understood that every editor would feel the conflict differently and may think that, okay, this is reason enough, and some people may not think that this is reason enough. But I
And
guess
that's fantastic.
we also need to have some insight into the author's motivation.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Dola. Divya Munjal, she is saying, will it not be too time consuming to mark each and every correction or suggestion in the template? In MS Word, we can add our comments at the very instance where we find such discrepancies.
The template is to be time, effective with your time and not make the time consuming, make the process time consuming. A template is something that you use later on. It might be time consuming for the first time when you are making that template, or as you keep evolving it, but later on you might not need to think of, have I checked the point of view, have I checked if all the dialogues are really crisp or something. So a template would be really handy in that cases. Initially it might take some time. This is not something that gets done in a day. I still keep evolving my templates, so this will happen. However, uh, eventually it will turn out to be time effective, not time consuming. Try it, you'll see.
Manjushri has another question. She is asking, does Freytag's plot diagram match a type of beat structure?
Sorry, did not understand the question. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, my
Does
question. I'm
yes,
sorry.
Manjushri. Yeah.
My question was basically I've not come across the term beat before. So I did a quick Google search, and for me, it sounds as if it's about the conflict, the rising action, the inciting action, the climax, and stuff like that. So there is a particular structure called as fray tags. The fray tags plot diagram that we use for beginning, exposition, conflict, rising action. Like
So
this.
basically, story beat, it's like a structural element. It will, it's an element of the narrative, and it is used to mark an intentional shift in tone. Whenever there is a shift in tone, that's a beat. So you are right in saying that writers, as writers, we will use story beats to structure our narratives, control the emotional arcs of our characters. So a shift in tone is a story beat, is a beat. This is actually lingo that is carried forward from screenwriters. Screenwriters use story beats a lot, but even adaptable to our novel writing, of course. Have I answered that? Okay.
Yeah, Madhavan wants to ask whether developmental editors they look at the bias.
Bias in the sense you mean prejudice, or like what kind of bias?
Madhavan, can you please
Author
unmute and
preference or
Mr. Madhavan, can you please unmute and
Yeah,
like
all
elaborate?
all sorts of gender, racial, or any other sort of discrimination, prejudice.
really, really important. Yes, as a developmental editor, and I think really good that you raised this point, because nowadays, especially more nowadays, when all of us are really trying to get into conscious, being conscious about using sensitive language. So really important as a developmental editor to focus on gender bias, or for example in India
Sensitivity
something
reading,
on
yeah.
caste, or I don't know, race, really important, and really good point that you've raised. Yes, we would need to look at that, definitely.
Dola, Jasminder here.
Hi,
Hi,
Jasminder.
hi. So I got initially when you had said about the email, which was just to break ice and get some information from the client about
Mm-hmm,
where they're headed. Then
mm-hmm,
when you've gone through the sample and everything else, you mentioned a report and then the actual sending back the manuscripts with all your points.
mm-hmm,
Right. So
mm.
then in the
Right.
report, is it just like a synopsis or a summary? What you had mentioned about,
Okay. I'm going to talk about reports in the this
oh,
next
great.
section. Yeah.
Take it,
We'll
take it.
so
Thanks.
and then if you have any questions, after my after I finish that, then we'll take it up. We'll
Done.
take it then.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
So Dola, before we move to the next section, can you answer one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone is a technical editor and wants to move into book editing. So how does she start?
Okay. I would like to ask if you are also a reader, and if you are, what genres do you like best? Okay. As a reader, if I am fond of reading romance, or if I'm fond of reading um, mysteries, for example, me, it would be easier for you to break into editing, especially developmental editing, if you are reading, if you are working with genres that you like as a reader. Because, as a reader, we carry, I've been reading all my life. I carry the reader's experience, what I expect from a romance story, what I expect a mystery to feel like. You carry all that subconscious experiment. So one is that, if you are a reader, you will have a easier time breaking into it. You need to get some training. We'll talk about that also later on during my presentation. This third section itself, get some training, get some mentorship if you can, get in touch with an experienced editor. I feel our ICF community is, it's so, well, we are also ready to help out each other, that if you, approach someone, I'm sure you will get some feedback, or to help you along in your journey. So get some training if you can. Read the books. So let's talk about that later on. In the presentation that's coming. Yeah, I'm going to talk about all this. But yes, to answer.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Janki Thakkar. If you have a minute to answer my query.
Sure, Janki.
Hello.
Hi. I
Yeah.
I can hear
The
you.
thing is that hi- yeah. The thing is that I haven't received any say training. It just happened to me. I helped out a friend of mine, and the work was well appreciated, and so far I have done say 15 plus manuscripts. So the thing is, this templates and all that you were talking about, I don't follow that. So because I haven't been aware about it, that it can be done in this way. My point is similar to a question that had been asked previously, that if we use templates, then I would find it cumbersome to go back to that template and check out each and everything. So I'd like to just take a minute to explain my working method, and you can, and I would like to give you to give an input as to whether it is correct. Like what I do is I put in comments. Even if I need to verify something, say there is a plot error, according to me it is a plot error, and later on it is rectified. So the one thing that can be beneficial is, of course, reading the entire manuscript at the first instance. Secondly, if I need to cross check something, whether like there will be small things. For example, the mystery I'm doing right now, a sheriff has been accused of tampering with the evidence. Now, towards the end, something as small as that, we might forget to cross verify कि ये हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ है. So when I put in a comment, I remember when I compile everything to look into that comment and check whether it has been done or not, whether it has been referred, wrapped up at the end of it or not. So is that a good enough way, or would template be a better way out? Sorry for the long
No, no
this thing.
problem. So see, what you're saying is, what you are doing is something that most of us already do. We all go through our comments and see whether whatever comments we have made have been resolved or not resolved, or so this is something, of course, we are all doing. And like I said, what I'm discussing today is the process that I follow, that I have evolved over these 8 years that I have been editing. So for someone like you, who's starting out, uh, maybe if something is working for you, don't stop doing it. That's my advice. If working this way is beneficial for you, you are not facing any problems, then continue doing that. You're doing good, okay, you're doing a good job, continue doing that. My issue is when I have so far edited almost I'm going to hit a century now, almost 100 books. During those 100 books, I faced a problem, whereas I was repeating some things about point of view, about showing and telling so many times in each and every manuscript, that it was essential for me to have a template. Okay, so that was where my process came out, and everybody has a different process. So if something's working for you, keep doing it. If it's not working, then it's time to think of maybe my way or some other way you come across. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Shall we do, do we have
Yes,
any more
Dola, I think
questions?
you can move to the next section. Yeah,
Okay.
we have, but we will
So,
take at the end. You can move to the next section.
okay. So the
Dr.
next slide.
Venkat, you will have to move it to the next screen. Yeah, next slide.
One moment. Dola, you mentioned
Okay,
in
hi, Gaurav.
development editing that even a single chapter is enough for you to be able to do it. But how would you know the finer details? How is the story moving, the plot, the character, flow, the structure, etc., if you were going to do it from one chapter?
I cannot do the whole dev edit of the whole book from one chapter, but I can gauge the author's skill. Their where they are in their publishing journey. I can gauge if the first chapter is gripping enough to hold me, to hold my attention. So things like that I can definitely gauge from a sample chapter, and that sample chapter will help me to formulate a working plan. Like I said, it will help me to estimate how much time I need to put in, how much should, the approximate cost could come to be. So the sample chapter is for that.
Oh,
But yes, you're
it's
right.
only for giving a cost and for getting into the editing, not for actually doing the development editing.
Exactly. You're right.
Okay, that's why I was wondering how would you be able to do development editing having just one chapter?
No, that chapter was to help me gauge, where those three things I talk about: author's goals, their scales, about the story.
Okay, fair enough.
Great. So this third part, this third part of this session, I'm going to be talking about marking up the manuscript and the editorial letter. So this is the part where I introduce the concept of a thoughtful editor to you. You see this written, be a thoughtful editor. What do I mean by that? From this stage on, as you begin marking up the manuscript, as you begin as you start on the bones of the editorial letter, it is important to be thoughtful to the author at all times. Um, one question that I've often noticed newbie editors asking in forums is, how much markup should they do? How much is enough during a dev edit? Because we all say it's big picture, don't go line by line. So how do you make out if it is less, what you're doing is less, or if you're doing something not needed? So here I would like to say that, remember, the developmental edit is scene by scene. So you don't need to add comments for each and every line. You can go scene by scene for your comments also. Be a thoughtful editor. Don't give too many comments on language and grammar and punctuation when clearly this is not the stage for it. These are not the things.
Not
I'm
about that.
sorry.
That's when you don't give language in.
I'm sorry. Did somebody ask me something, or okay? I'll carry on.
Go ahead.
Okay. So don't comment on things that are not really necessary at that stage. These punctuation, grammar, line by line things will be dealt on later on in the editorial process. Be a thoughtful editor and concentrate on what you have been asked to do. Think of the dev edit, like we discussed this a couple of times. Think of it as a learning opportunity for the author. So if you put vague comments like, here can be written better, who does that help? Or what does better look like? Your better, like Anupam said, so subjective. Your better might be different than my better. So our comments need to be elaborate, in the sense it should demonstrate what we mean. If possible, here you should also write a couple of sentences to give them an example of what you mean by better. Okay. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is, you all remember that older days that feedback is best served as a sandwich, the bitter part in between, and sweet things on top and bottom. So use that wisdom for your dev edits too. Be sure to find all the good things about the manuscript. Sprinkle praise throughout the manuscript. You need to really, all editors, we all need to really remember that, not to just mark the weaknesses but also the strengths of the manuscript, because a writer needs to know their strengths also, not just
That's
their weaknesses.
really, really important, Dola. So glad you brought this up.
Yeah, right, thanks. The the fourth thing is keeping our language positive. And the example that's on your screen, while that example might seem made up, let me assure you it isn't. Okay, this example, these words were actually said to an author by an editor, and which the later on the author told me about. So don't be that person. Okay. Be respectful to the author and their journey. Writing a book, I'm a writer and an editor. I know I'm writing my book for like 4 years now. So writing a book is really hard. Many people never complete it, but your author has. They have reached a milestone, so celebrate that with them. God knows how many months they have, not just months, how many years they have spent writing that. So be respectful for the author. Keep your language and your tone positive. Those manuscripts are the author's babies, So love those babies, okay? And whatever suggestions you are giving to the editor, remember to always have solid reasons to back up your suggestions. It's not your story, it's the author's story, right? It's their story. So if as a dev editor I am asking them to delete a chapter, remove a character completely, anything drastic, I need to have solid reasons to back up my theories. Don't just give suggestions, have reasons. And the most important thing, and we all should always strive for, is to keep the writer's voice and the message they want to send intact throughout the developmental edit. Make sure that you don't mess with the writer's voice, not nor with the message that they want to send. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to mark up the manuscript, let's get to the editorial report. Next slide is editorial report, and I'm going to talk about why is an editorial report an important part of a developmental edit. Of course, I'm going to assume that my telling you is important is not enough to make you do it. So I'm going to tell you why it is important for me as an editor and why is it important to your author. Okay, so for me as an editor, the letter that I write, the editorial letter, helps me to uh, articulate myself better. It helps me to summarize my thoughts and feelings that I gathered from reading the manuscript. So because I, as an editor, as a professional, I always need to present comprehensive and efficient front to my authors, and that editorial letter helps me get these thoughts together to communicate to the author later on. It also provides me an easy way to automatically order and group editing topics in a relevant manner. So it's easy to, for the author to understand the feedback. Now, for the author, it's really useful in the long weeks of revision. After a developmental edit, they would be revising their manuscript according to your feedback. So they will have all the major issues in one place to refer to. They won't have to hunt back and forth between comments to see did I fix this thing in all the manuscript or not, because we all technology nowadays, we all have faced it. I don't know how many of you have, but I have, that I deleted some comment by mistake, never even realizing it. An author can do that. They could delete a comment, and then what if they do delete by mistake and never realize it? Should that issue go unnoticed? No, right? So the editorial letter is an invaluable tool to the writer. In such cases, they have a feedback in a letter form separate from the manuscript. Whatever happens to the manuscript, they have the letter to fall back on. So what should be the contents of the editorial report? Next slide. This slide I told you, the why. And now let's talk about what should it contain. Of course, the editorial report will contain big picture feedback. The feedback should be grouped in a structured manner with the biggest issues first and the smallest issues last. It is really important that your opening paragraphs are generous in praise, like we discussed previously also. Let the author know your sincere opinion. By praise, I do not mean that, I do not mean surface level feedback. I mean, let the author know what you like best in the story, your genuine opinion on the story as well as their writing skills. Okay. And now later on, when you go to discuss issues, cite examples from the manuscripts. Give them something to refer to, like a chapter number or page number maybe, so that whatever feedback you're giving, for example, if I'm telling the author, this chapter here is really heavy on telling, not much showing going on, then give them some context, give an example of what you mean. Whatever suggestions you're giving, Make sure you back them up with your reasons. Another common question, newbie editors ask is, what should be the length of the letter? How long should a letter be? And the answer to this question is that you need to be as much detailed as is necessary. Not as much detail as is possible, but what is necessary. And what I mean by that is the length of the editorial letter will depend on the skill of the author, the condition of the manuscript. These two things, the skill of the author, the condition of the manuscript. So a newbie author might need a 10-page report where I'm explaining, because remember, this is a coaching opportunity. So we might need to coach them about, what are point of view shifts, or what are conflicts, how does inner and outer conflict match up each other. So a skilled editor, someone who has book deals, maybe published 5 books, some maybe has a movie deal, that author will not, I need not go into so much detail to that author. I can make do with a 2-page report also. So just give as much detail as is necessary. And this is where the thoughtful editor thing comes on. Each case is different, each story, each author is different. So tailor your developmental edit according to that. Okay, let's also talk about this third thing, this last point up there, positive neutrality, which seems like a kind of oxymoron. But what I mean by positive neutrality is that the tone of your letter should be positive yet neutral. Okay, let's face it, sometimes you will get such a delightful manuscript that you will be amazed that the author has paid you for the privilege to edit it. Sometimes some manuscripts you will get will offer you, intellectual stimulation. They will feel like, solving a puzzle. And some other manuscripts will feel maybe draining or tedious. It happens to all of us. Okay, but we cannot let that affect the tone of our editorial letter. All our clients, no matter where they are in their publishing journey, they deserve the same kind of respect. Remember the motto again, I'm reiterating it to drill it into my and your everyone's brains. Remember to be a thoughtful editor. We cannot say to the author whose MS we liked that, I really liked it. Oh my God, wow, you have a bestseller in your hands. Because editors don't make a bestseller, readers do, right? We cannot predict what will be or won't be a bestseller. Otherwise, J.K. Rowling, she wouldn't have to face 35 rejections to before she even got a publishing deal. Okay, so remember that. Don't go overboard on your praise. Oh my God, you have a bestseller. Similarly, if it were up to many of us writers or editors, if I got a manuscript from someone like Stephanie Meyer, we might have given a feedback that, oh, this manuscript is badly written, so many adverbs, all the things that we tell not to do, she has done it. But again, look at that book's, look at Twilight's sales figures. The readers loved it. So remember to be positive yet neutral. I hope I'm making this point clear enough. Um, it is
Yes, I
important.
think it's a very valid point, and you
Yes.
explained it beautifully.
Yes.
Okay, great. So
Very
important
clear.
practice. It's important to be encouraging and respectful of at all times. We want to give maximum benefit to the author, and also remember that our job is not to judge the manuscript. It is not to judge the author. Only to help tell a compelling story in the best way possible. Okay, so I think we are almost at the reach the end of the presentation. Just a couple more slides. Next slide, I'm going to talk about what kind of work that we need to take on. So sometimes, especially during the last year, the pandemic situation and all, many of us might not have so much work, and we will feel like taking up whatever work comes our way. So which is better? Is it better to be a jack of all trades? Is it better to be a master of a niche? Now, in my opinion, um developmental editors, all of us, need deep and thorough knowledge of genres. What I mean is that while it is true, sometimes work can be so short, we want to take up everything. But for developmental editing, I'm going to give my everything. I need to focus on the genre, and fiction has so many genres. All of those genres are divided into so many subgenres. Do you think one person can master everything, all the genres, all the subgenres? I don't think so. I think development editors need an understanding of their genre. For example, the tropes of a genre, what are the audience expectations of a genre, and even the story structure. All genres follow different story structures. Like a romance author might follow Gwen Hayes' method, or they might follow the story beats by Jamie Gold. And a mystery author might follow, that 12 chapter mystery formula, or they might follow the 4 act cozy mystery structure. So all genres have different structures, and as one editor, we cannot do justice to our client's manuscript if we want to be jack of all trades. In my opinion, it's best to pick 3 or 4 broad genres that we like to read and choose them to offer developmental editing services. Because we like to read them, we can read up on them, and then we will be able to do better jobs at it. And another good news is experts get paid better than generalists. And don't we all want to get paid better? I know I do. So here's my opinion: better to be a master of a niche, and don't make the niche too small that nobody is writing that. No, take some 3 or 4 broad genres, make that your niche. And so I made a point just now, we need to choose the genres that we like reading. So a logical question that follows is, how important is reading as an editor? So in the next slide, all I'm going to say is that it is very important. The answer to that question, how important is reading, is very, just like it is important for a writer to read extensively in their genre. Similarly, it's really important for the editors. And what should you read? Obvious answer to that, of course, is books on the craft of editing and writing. Okay, one more thing that I should discuss is really interesting. This has come up in my discussion with other editors, that some people ask me, why do you read books on the craft of writing, or why do you take courses? For example, I was really interested in writing, MFA, Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. So why I'm an editor, why do I want to read books on writing? Well, that's because writing books teach how to tell a compelling story, right? And which is our job also as an editor. We want to identify the good things about a story and apply that. So I found not just books on the craft of editing, but books on the craft of writing are a good source to get knowledge. Along with craft books, you should also read books in your chosen genre. I've said it enough times now. Some books that are classics, that that have withstood the test of time. Books that are popular now in the contemporary world. And also read books that have dared to subvert the genre. They have changed the face of a genre. All right. I think we are at the end of the presentation. The next 2 slides, are about my suggestions of either books or blogs or courses that you can follow. So you can write it down, maybe take a screenshot or something. And some of the books here, now that we are on it, Magic of Fiction by Beth Hill gives you an overall look at the whole editing process. The next three books, Anatomy of a Story, Save the Cat, and Story Grid, are books on structure. They are going to talk about, John Truby is going to talk about 22 elements. Save the Cat, Blake Snyder is going to talk about 15 story beats, and Story Grid again is following the arc of a story. So these three books on the structure. Emotional craft of fiction is to get the reader emotionally invested in the writing. Understanding show don't tell, of course, it's dialogue and first 5 pages, I think they're explanatory. um, the blogs that you can follow, the next slide, there are some blogs and there are some courses. So these blogs are something that I always, they are my go-to. I think I forgot to mention one here, which is specially an editing blog that I religiously follow, is Louise Hanby's blog, um, Proofreading Parlor. So I missed out on that, but definitely write it. For editing and writing, I follow Louise Hanby, and then I follow Fiction University, Janice Hardy. So these are some things that I myself follow and I recommend. Okay. Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling, really concise, kind of a checklist that you can use for every editing project or writing project, say. And now some of these courses, I personally have taken the two courses on top: Introduction to Fiction Editing via CIEP and Developmental Editing of Fiction. I've done the beginners, but this year I'm going to do the intermediate also, via EFA. So these are the courses that I have personal knowledge about, and I would recommend them to everyone. Okay. CIEP one is more basic. The EFA one, you can choose beginner, intermediate, advanced, according to wherever you are in your editorial journey. The third course, the writer of this author's editors clinic, the editor and the writer, Barbara, I have read a book from her. It's called an author's guide to working with editors. No, an editor's guide to working with authors, something like that. And editor's guide to working with authors, I think, by Barbara. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's spelled Sjoholm. So Barbara, that book really fascinated me. So I think her course is going to be phenomenal. So I will recommend that. And the fourth course by Liminal Pages, Sophie Plale, is something all fiction editors highly recommend. So I put that on the list also in case, some of you want to explore it. So at the end of the presentation, I'm open to taking any questions that you might have so far.
Yes, Dola. Anup Mukherjee wants to know whether two developmental editors can take the story in two different directions.
The direction of a story needs to come from the editor. Not the editor, sorry, the author. The editors, the developmental editors, can twist the plots up. I can twist the structure up. I can twist the plot up to tell that same story in a different way. But the story is always what the author wants to tell, not what I feel as a developmental editor should be told. It's the author's story, not my story. I can help them tell it in a better way, in a different way. I can suggest, listen, if you do it like this, it will be so much interesting. But it's up to the author to take my suggestion or reject it.
Okay, Dola. Mr. Madhavan, he wants to know whether developmental editors detect copyright violations.
Not really, no. I have never had to do that because the manuscripts that we are working on is a really rough draft. I think it would more fall into, when I'm line editing or when I'm copy editing. This is something that will come at that stage, not at the developmental editing stage. At least I have not come across this, something like that.
But there can be a situation where an author has completely lifted a story from somewhere else. Then
how do you find that? How you need to be so well read in so many books. I don't know how many. Every day in India, 199 some books get published every day in India. How do you make that out? So I don't think it is possible, and if you go down that rabbit hole, it's going to cost you a lot of time. So I don't think it's needed at the developmental editing stage. It can be something for during the copy editing or the line editing stage.
Okay, okay.
Excuse me,
Conclusion,
Dola.
Yes,
yes,
hi.
Divya, go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me, Dola. You just said that at developmental editing stage, we don't need to bother about copyright or if the text has been published elsewhere. So, in that case, there can be plagiarism issues. So, do you ask the authors to provide you a written declaration that they have not picked the text from
I do
somewhere
not do
else
that.
and it is their own content? So I
I
think
do
for
not do that.
developmental editor, it will be helpful that they get the declaration signed by the author. So in the end, it doesn't fall on the developmental editor shoulders. So
It
that's
never
my suggestion.
any
But yeah.
it never falls on the editor's shoulders. Just like I said, it's the author's story. The only credit you get is as an editor. Doesn't matter if it's a developmental edit. And I think I'm a writer myself, and I think it would, at the very onset, if I'm the writer and I'm approaching and the editor is asking me to, give a statement or prove that this is my story, I feel like it would be kind of, so insulting to me. So no, I do not do that. I do not advise you to do that, simply because when you are a developmental editor, the copyright of the story is with the author. Okay, if there is some legal trouble, the editor is not someone who is respond at this stage, at the developmental editing stage. If you are working for a publisher, that might be a completely different scenario. Okay, and your contract, whatever you have in your contract, and contracts are something else, a really vast topic to be discussed in on a separate webinar. But you need to have a contract that you sign with the author, which should have all these clauses and which the author can go through at their own will. But this is not something that I will ask the author to attest to. I have not done.
Not
I'm not sure
okay.
if other editors do it.
Okay, but not even a simple declarative language like you do for your template.
You can have that as a contract. Like I said, in the contract, maybe there is one line that, the this work is the author's original or whatever. I don't know the legal words
Yes,
for that,
yes, yes.
but yeah, you can have that in the contract. But let's not ask the author that directly, on their face. That
May I add something to that?
sure,
Divya,
yes, please.
basically, whether or not there is plagiarism in the manuscript is not something that is that can get the editor legally, liable. The
Yeah,
manuscript
exactly.
is absolutely and totally the responsibility of the author, and in many cases, even the publisher is not liable
Hmm.
because in most cases, and I can tell you from my experience in Oxford University Press, in some cases we had escalated issues of plagiarism, and the legal department very clearly said that we are not going to do the authenticate or the testing of whether how much is the plagiarism, what is the percentage, and then ask the author to change it. The author is totally and fully responsible and legally liable to take care of any plagiarism issue. It is especially
Absolutely.
important in academic publishing, and there too the author has to ensure that the plagiarism percentage is low. Some journals publishers check the plagiarism percentage and accordingly advise the author, but ultimate liability for any kind of plagiarism is that of the authors. Very rarely of it will never be of the editor. I don't think it would be of the editor
You're
unless the
absolutely
editor
right.
is a co-writer.
You're right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll give you this example that came to me just right now. JK, Nora Roberts. Some author, has lifted Nora Roberts' novels and published them as their own. And Nora Roberts has filed a case on them, on the author, not the editor. So again, doesn't matter who the editor was, whether they made out. And Nora Roberts is such a famous name. You should be able to just check plagiarism for all her books. They are so widely available everywhere. But no, it's not the responsibility of the editor. And my advice is better not start on the wrong foot, by suggesting something like this even.
Can I add something
If I
here?
may.
Yeah,
Hi,
Dola,
Anil.
but I want to add that, at times I have had queries from authors, especially new authors, who worry that since the editor is going to, edit or work on their manuscript, they feel that maybe the editor would also want a part or the name in the book. So at times I have specified very clearly that the editor has no credit except editing the book. So maybe that's the reason some people get confused that editor would have a liability also for plagiarism.
No, absolutely right. So mention in your contract, all the editor the only edit credit that we get is for editing the book. And even if the author doesn't give you credit, if they don't put your name in their book edited by Dola Basu Singh, still you cannot really do anything about it, is there? I mean, until and unless you have that in your contract, that's not something that you can. You get happy that you worked on a book and you got paid on time. Whatever you asked for, you happy with that. And it's a bonus if the author mentions you in an acknowledgement, if they write a testimonial or give you credit. That's a bonus.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not.
That I mention it in the
Yeah.
In the
contract
fun,
that the work is authors.
I'd like to interrupt. I'd
Hi.
like to interrupt. The fun is that the acknowledgements are written by me only, and I'm the editor, and then they ask me to include my name. So that's been fun also.
Yeah, in
Right,
fact, I've
absolutely.
realized that at times if we don't tell the people, to give credit to the editor, they would give their acknowledgements for everybody and just forget the editor. And I've had it, an incident like that with a very close friend also. So now I've started telling people that you should mention your editor.
It's always a nice feeling,
Well,
you get this
my
fuzzy
experience,
feeling.
excuse me. In my experience, I included the pre-press team. I said the pre-press team because I was in-house. I said they should, because I was writing the acknowledgement. I included that, and the author was very glad because he was perhaps as socialist as I am, and that is a thing. That was fun. That was good.
And I think, if the authors are really happy, they would want to recommend you to people. They would want to credit you. If you
Yes,
have helped
yes.
them, yes, absolutely.
But sometimes they forget that mentioning in the book also gives a lot of,
Sometimes they forget.
opportunities to the editor. So
Maybe,
otherwise,
writing an email at the end of, their, after the editing journey, at the end of it, maybe ask them for a testimonial and just maybe nudge them a little bit that, I would be so helpful if it would be helpful for my business if you can recommend or something like that. So most authors, they are happy to do it.
Could I ask Dola?
Hi, yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
I was wondering if developmental editors are compelled to stay abreast of current genre trends, current publishing trends, and if so, to what degree do your comments and recommendations how are they biased towards that? To ask, would you steer an author in a particular direction based on current trends?
Yes, well, really a great question, and I would say yes. For example, let's talk about this urban fantasy setting nowadays. Many authors who are writing urban fantasies are going into something called, which is a cross between romance and urban fantasy. In that they call it academic fantasy, something like that. So that is a current trend. And if you find similarities in the manuscript, that is some one suggestion that you can give to your author, that see, this is really hot right now, this is something happening in the genre. And if you are self-publishing, if the author, this is a business for the author, then I'm sure they would appreciate you, appreciate the editor telling them that this is what is happening and you might want to, just a little bit tweaks in the story can get that story there. So yes, I'm sure they would appreciate. Again, it's up to the author, of course, to accept or reject it, but I'm sure every author would appreciate that, and you can do it as an editor.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, hi Janki.
Yeah, I was actually looking out for courses where I can actually get that stamp of being an editor, because on an international forum, if I'm approaching something, then they would be looking out for websites and all that. So I thought it would be great. And when I looked for Indian like universities or something, I came across IGNOU. Now I don't know how good is it, or um, how. I mean, I know that it's accredited, but then I am not sure the level of like information that they
I
provide. Is it good enough?
I looked at this IGNU course that you're mentioning, this MFA in creative writing thing. I looked at it. It's basically what I found out was that it's not a really instructor guided course, if you know what I mean. It's completely like a self study kind of thing. You get the
Okay.
books, you study, you go and give exams. There is no instructor
Okay.
intervention in that. So
Okay.
if self learning, on your own is your thing, go for it. And if you want somebody to, an instructor to maybe mentor you, then that might not be the best option.
Okay.
In that
Thank you
case,
so much.
the EFA courses are really great in that EFA has an instructor taking all these courses, at least the developmental editing ones, the beginner, intermediate, advanced, all of these three. An instructor is with you all the step of the way. So I feel that uh, once they are costly, not too costly, but still costly. So uh, maybe think of it
That
as an
was,
investment. Yeah, think of it
yes,
as
that
an
was,
investment in your
huh,
career and save
yes,
for it, and then take
yes.
that course later on instead of
EFA,
yeah.
EFA,
Okay.
right?
EFA,
Yeah.
yeah, Editorial
Thank,
Freelancers Association.
I
okay.
have a question, if
Thank
I
you.
may.
Yes, hi Manjushri.
So my question is about what are the steps to enter into a contractual and remunerative commitment with the DE? When is it to be done, and what does the contract entail and include for both the parties?
You will start the contract as soon as you accept the work and the author accepts your rates, etc. That is when the contract is to be set at the very outset of a developmental editing, before you do anything. Maybe you've just done a sample edit, the author likes your edits, they agree to your rates. That is when we enter into the contract.
Oh,
Now I'm just going to be brief here because contracts is really vast topic, but two things that the contract definitely must have. Don't just write I will do a developmental edit, because in our industry, in the publishing industry, it is there are so many wide terms for it. Some call it story doctoring, some call it structural editing, some even confuse it with substantive editing, like we discussed. So important to if you write developmental editing, write what are the things you are going to do. I'm going to give you big picture feedback, I'm going to check characters, I'm going to check point of view, stuff like that. So really important to talk about the steps. Say for example, talk about what you're not going to do. I am not going to check punctuation, grammar, your language. So that is one thing. And of course the contract should have how you are going to deliver the manuscript to the author. Are you going to do it in stages? Are you going to do it at the very end, when you reach the very end of the program? And it would have payments also, when an author is going to pay the editor, the schedule for that. So these are the three main things that are really important. Another fourth point that you might want to include is what they call an NDA. Some authors, they are handing over their whole manuscript to you as an editor, and they might feel a little bit hesitant in that. Will the author, will the editor steal my story? Will it end up somewhere on the internet? So really important to um, let your author know that you're not going to do anything about that, you're not going to reverse engineer their story or something. So sign an NDA. So I think these 3-4 things are what form a basic contract. And then I'm going to suggest a book by Dick Margulis. It's called The Paper It's Written On. Dick Margulis. It's a book completely about contract. I think it's available in ebook only. I don't know. You need to check that. I read it when it first came out, like 1.5, 2 years ago. But anyways, that's a book that you can refer to for contracts. Again, be it's a book written by someone based in Canada. So all the things might not be suitable for someone like us who are here in India, right? So be adaptive. Don't take everything into consideration. Think of your Indian scenario while you are adapting it. But otherwise, it's a good book. Has lots of valuable points.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Dola, a related question is about pricing. How do you charge for your services? Is it per word, per page? And
I charge per word.
okay.
Mhm.
And I would say there were a lot of questions, but they have been answered in the chat box by other participants. And
Okay, great. Thanks for helping me out, guys.
so
Really, thanks so much. Yeah.
there is one last question. How do you break into book editing?
Okay, really, big question with so many things. I think we I did mention some of the points when somebody previously asked. How do we break into it? Is uh, get some kind of training. If you cannot invest outright in a course, we might not have the budget, then it's fine as of now, but start saving for a course. See if you can, like, Kaniz, what Kaniz said, she has reached a stage in her career when she can afford to help someone for free, and she does that. She loves giving back to the community. So when you are really beginning, when you have no work, you have not done work on any manuscript, think of something like this. Can you do something on a really low pay, or maybe even pro bono for an author? The author will, if some author does not have a budget for it, maybe you can help them out and they can recommend you to their friends. They can write a testimonial for you that you can use. So also think of some people go into job boards like, I don't know, Upwork or Fiverr. I have not done that myself, but that might be a good way to get into it at the very beginning. Another important thing is about the ICF community. Like I said, there are many editors here who are willing, more than willing, to give back, more than willing to help anyone who is asking any. I have felt that myself. I have asked so many questions to people, had long phone conversations, and everyone has been so accommodating. So really, don't feel shy to ask a question. Reach out and somebody will answer you.
Thanks, Dola, for answering that question, and thanks for a very insightful, well-researched session. The comments in the chat box, I will share them with you. And
Okay, that would be great because I couldn't see any of it.
yeah, and we have our speaker for the next session, Reena Singh. She is present in the audience, and she will be talking about the word of newspaper editing next Sunday. So,
Okay.
Reena, is it possible for you to give a brief 1 minute intro
Yeah,
before we?
yeah. Okay, actually, love this session, Dola. What I do is been very unstructured and haphazard. I do tend to give people a lot of development editing tips, but in my own style. When I read it, actually, I read everything 3 times. That's the
Wow.
only way I think one can do a thorough job. Yeah, and what I would like to say in my next session would be, of course, not about um, like the world of newspapers and what goes into editing there. There you have things like time constraints, and you have to do, it's your first and only chance at anything you do, really. You don't have the luxury of looking at in a daily newspaper. It's different in a weekly, and I've worked in a magazine, mostly all for the Times of India group. So I worked for Femina, I worked for Delhi Times, I worked for Times of India main paper, I worked for the feature pages, I worked for the op-ed page. So a lot of different kinds of experiences. And after my retirement 3 years ago, I've done a lot of editing of books, fiction included. Now, of course, only spiritual books, so and non-fiction. So I can kind of compare between the different worlds as well. So I think I'll add some slides on that in my session next time, next week.
I'm
So
sure it's going to be wonderful. Just hearing about your experience, I think I'm really fascinated. I'd love to join your session. I'm sure it's going to be
I
great.
hope to see you there. Yes.
I will be there.
And yeah.
Thanks, Reena. We'll see you next Sunday. And Dola, today's attendance was 60 plus. So we
Yay.
scored a half century today. It was a century the previous week, and I think we will go on this
Document.
track. And for Saturday, we will be back with the travel series session. I think editors should join that also because we need a break from work, and that's why that series is titled Break Free. And Vikram Chaudhary from Financial Express, he's assistant editor with Financial Express. He will be taking that session on his like biking journey in the Himalayas. He went to some places near the China border, so he will be telling some interesting stories and sharing some beautiful pictures. So please be there next Saturday at 4 p.m. and next Sunday at 11 a.m. Have a nice day, all of you. Thanks, Dola,
Thank
once
you.
again, and thanks to all the
Everyone.
participants.
It was really lovely, chatting for. I have been yapping for like 2 hours, and thank you so much for being a lovely audience and pardoning my that tech electricity going on fiasco and all.
Oh,
Thanks,
happens with
thanks a
all
lot.
of us. Dola happens with all of us.
Yeah, Dola,
But
that
lovely,
happens.
lovely
Session, Dola.
session.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
it thoroughly.
Oh my god!
That happens, Dola, and maybe in between even Dr. Venkat's system stopped working, and you didn't realize it was all happening in the background. And that was the time like we were having the conversation, and then he restarted the system, and then he like shared the presentation again.
Okay.
So
It's
so
a
all
little
these,
bit different on the phone. I cannot really see anything. I can just see the what's some of the
yeah,
faces and all. It really was different here. Yeah,
yeah. The only thing better with
I'm
the
happy
phone is the
that
lighting. Only thing better with the phone is the lighting.
maybe the camera and all is better compared to the laptop, and also maybe that's why.
Yeah. So
Okay,
today
great,
you
lovely having you all.
also like scored your hat trick of sessions. We started with her interview on like 12th of September. Yesterday she interviewed Jyotirmay Chaudhary, and today she like presented the session. So congratulations, Dola, and thanks to everyone for staying with us for almost 2 hours. And have a nice day. See you
Thank
again.
you.